Good evening, everybody. As Marlo said, my name is Caitlin and I work at Sport Auckland. It's my pleasure to get to introduce to you all this afternoon some clubs that we're lucky enough to have join us, and they are from outside of Auckland and have already had to go through return to play with this new Delta variant. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you all and ask him to turn on his camera is Gavin Kimball, and he is from the Phoenix Volleyball Club in Tauranga. Welcome, Gavin.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So Phoenix Volleyball is a relatively new entity. We were formed last year, and I suppose our first club season was delayed. Club season volleyball, for those who don't know, occurs over winter. And it was delayed as a consequence of COVID, and then we entertained the sort of return to work under the previous iteration of this virus, which we thought was difficult at that time, but in reality it's a much easier proposition than what we're now facing with this new variant. So the things that we instituted last year were a 100-person limit within the gym, or within spaces within a gym, a large gym like the big Bay Park venue that we've got down here. Mandatory temperature testing on arrival, being very diligent in terms of not admitting sick people or anyone who even could have the potential to be sick, somebody with an elevated temperature or a runny nose or whatnot, were excluded, and we relied on self-reporting there, and everyone was pretty compliant, to be fair. And things like sanitizing and keeping non-players or non-participants away seemed quite difficult at the time, but as I say, is relatively easy compared to what we face now. So this new variant has taken all of those mechanisms and put them on steroids. So just to give you an introduction to what we do, we don't have club rooms. So I see there's a question around what this means for club rooms. I can't help you there. We rely on two school gyms, one that is managed by a college and the other one which is managed by a commercial entity, a late, of the Tauranga City Council. Before entering the Aquinas gym, which is the Tauranga City Council based facility, we had to prepare a comprehensive health and safety plan that identified all the risks and the various measures that we would be undertaking to address those risks. And I'll run you through what those measures are very quickly. And before, we were not allowed to enter that gym until that health and safety plan was signed off, and there is recurrent compliance requirements with it as well. So our compliance could be audited at any time. So the two facilities we train at, I should say, are unmanned when we train at them. We have alarm codes and keys and so forth. And the other one is owned by a college, and we have effectively rolled out our same health and safety plan before we start. So what a typical practice looks like for us: we arrive earlier. We are greeted with a thermometer, not one that goes in your mouth or in your ear, but one of the infrared types that you can determine a person's temperature by putting it close to their forehead. A person that can pass within the normal range of temperatures then has to do the QR code, keep a mask on all this time, QR code, sanitize, go inside, set their gear 2 meters away from the nearest person's gear. So we have people littered all the way around the periphery of the gym. We have about 50 members and staff at any one of our practices because we run multiple teams. Then those parties go and assist in setting up the gear, at which time everything is sanitized. So we have supplied our own disinfectant gear. At some cost, but it is what it is. We disinfect the poles and the nets, tops and bottoms of the volleyball nets, and then all of the volleyballs. So we have about 42 volleyballs, and they're disinfected before every training. And if we have two teams training in one slot and then another team following, then those volleyballs are disinfected between those two separate trainings. Anyone who is not on a court is required to have a face mask on. That includes a coach, which can make communication challenging. Anyone who is on the court can actually remove their face mask, but as soon as they go off the court, be it for a team chat or the like, has to put their face mask back on. So it sounds tough, but if you look at our colleagues in the States playing volleyball, they've had to play volleyball in face masks. Quite how they do that is beyond me, but they've been doing that for a number of months. And then everything happens in reverse. So, I will say no drink bottles can be shared. We're not allowed to utilise the water supplies on site. We have to bring all of our own water and take all of our own water off. All rubbish and so forth has to be taken away with us and disposed of. Toilet use is actively discouraged. If toilets are to be used, then we're required to disinfect them before and after every user. The high contact areas like the toilet seat, obviously, in the cistern are the key points of focus. And then when we go to leave, everything occurs in reverse. All of the equipment is disinfected and taken down. All of the volleyballs are disinfected. And people are required to put their masks on and move out towards their cars in an orderly fashion, trying to maintain social distancing. So it is a huge rigmarole for us, but for us and for all of our players, it's a pain in the backside. It's deemed to be an acceptable pain in the backside, and we'd rather do that so we can continue to play and continue to have access to those facilities, and just to continue to do what we're doing, in the hope that if we do this, then hopefully it will prevent us from having to go back up in elite levels, or at least minimise that prospect. So that's what we do.
There's a couple of questions for Gavin from volleyball, which I'll just ask. What was the player reception like to your measures, Gavin?
Well, I think that it is fair to say that they'd have preferred not to have had to do them, but I think the reality is also the key benefit for them was to be able to play volleyball again. So that outweighed any annoyance. And to be fair, the more you do the measures, the more they just become part of training. We're into about our 6th or 7th training with these measures in place, and they just are what they are. It's like a cost of doing business.
Thanks, Kevin. Another question for you. What player limit did you impose? Government guidelines seemed confusing, 50 for indoors, but 100 for team sports. So what have you been doing?
Indoors, definitely 50. Indeed, there was some suggestion by the venue operator initially that we'd have to be down to 30 because of the limits or the space that's actually within the gym itself. But the limit is 50. So we have 3 teams of 12 plus about 4 or 5 managers, so we squeak under that limit, but we definitely don't let anyone else in.